This is the biodiversity team. So if you've joined the wrong group, you can move that. Just open up your breakout room and you can check and join the right one. Um, but we're going to go through biodiversity. Okay. Uh, just anyone joined late. My name is Rob Nelson. I am one of two biodiversity officers in the country, and Claire, the coordinator, will have her details at the end as well. Biodiversity is usually the fifth team for green schools, but some of you may not have done energy, so you might be coming in as your fourth team. Either way, it means that the school is a long-term school in terms of green schools. You're either working on it 10 years or 8 years, so you have expertise within the school, whether you're a new coordinator or not. The school has been working on green schools for a long time, so there's expertise there to draw on. Um, Biodiversity Flag is sponsored and supported by the National Parks and Wildlife Services. So it actually helps them in what their requirements are to sponsor and have us work alongside each other. They have just launched Ireland's National Biodiversity Action Plan, which covers from last year up until 2030. So that's worth having a look at, and some of it might be relevant for you as well. So in turn, this flashed up earlier on the last presentation, and this is kind of a look at Green School's savings over the past year, over all of our different teams. You can spot there's a few. The idea of sharing this is that you might think that the little actions that you take, they don't add up to a lot. But when you're taking them as part of a much wider audience of green schools in Ireland, nearly 4,000, and green schools around the world, then those actions actually add up to a huge amount of change. In terms of biodiversity in review, last year we made some significant changes and significant things like the schools involved planted 1,791 trees. I'm not going to read out all of these because you'll be able to look them back, but we did things like near 500 plus bird feeders, 116 wildlife areas, that's unmanaged areas within the school grounds, and 240 plus mini beast hotels. So lots of different changes from low cost to no cost to when you have actually adding in things into the school grounds that cost money, you can do an awful lot with biodiversity. So, what is biodiversity? I thought I had taken off all these slide transitions, but obviously not. Biodiversity, simple terms, is biological diversity. So, bio meaning life, and diversity mean lots of different types. That's what it is. When we're talking about biodiversity, it's lots of different types of life, from plant life to animal life, and then also looking at the interactions between those lives in ecosystems. So high level of biodiversity of diversity is considered to be a very important and desirable thing. Because if, say, one thing affects a crop or affects one type of tree, maybe a different type of tree is resilient to it and it can help giving us on different varieties and different ways for animals to adapt and to live out. In terms of biodiversity in Ireland, the picture is quite large. There's Ireland is a very important habitat for some unique species to Ireland, and we have huge numbers of different things. When I'm looking at this slide, the thing that stands out most to me is the unknowns. So we have nearly 15,000 unknown invertebrates that are undocumented. So things that you could actually be involved in citizen science and reporting these and getting them as a known species. We have about 25 species and 60 habitats recognized at an EU level for protection. But some of our other native species are under threat and need protection, and some of that has changed recently. For example, the Baskin sharks have become a protected species in the last year. So there's always things happening in biodiversity the whole way through. Um, so why biodiversity? Why is it so important? Well, in simple terms, it's a services provider for us. It provides us with oxygen. Without pollination, we wouldn't have food. It gives us pest controls. It gives us soil aeration, water purification, just leisure terms. Fun and inspiration. Some of our place names are named after in particular in the Irish language. Some of our counties are named after the things that would be found there. For example, Derry is after oak trees. Mayo is the plain of the yew tree. So we get a lot of that, and the writings from our poets and writers have been inspired, and painters have been inspired by nature and by biodiversity in the past. Importantly, we get things like our food, our medicine, our fuel, our building materials, even clothing comes from living plants, living organisms, and that's part of our biodiversity. It also protects us from soil erosion and slides like that corner picture there. Flooding, for example, believe it or not, Seal Watch Ireland have just planted over the last couple of years 10,000 trees to prevent flooding down in the Wexford area. So I know some of the schools here might be from Wexford. You might not have known about that, but it would be worth looking into that as well. And it recycles nutrients. So things like nitrogen fixing in the ground, our clover brings the nitrogen in and replenishes the soil, and then it helps us for growing crops. So there's lots and lots of different things. And some of those medicines that we haven't, some of those undiscovered things in biodiversity, we've only explored. I think we've explored more of space than we have of our seas. So we could yet come across something that is very important or will be very important to medicine in the future. As I said, many species are unknown value to us. Many species are not yet discovered and may be of value to us. But all species, you should remember, all species are valuable in of themselves anyway. So, um, whether they have a monetary value or not, they're important just for being themselves and being alive. And for that reason alone, we should be protecting them. And all biodiversity is intrinsic value of itself, basically. Um, in terms of monetary value, which is an interesting topic to have, especially if you're, say, a secondary school, um, mainly we get this from our agriculture or tourism industry, but biodiversity is valued at about 2.6 billion per year, which is a phenomenal amount. And in terms of just say one species like the earthworm, that value is about 1 billion per year, what they do. And then to try and replace that can be incredibly complicated and can be things that we haven't come, our science hasn't met up with what they do. Like we can't actually replace those animals and the ecosystems that they protect. So what's happening to biodiversity? Why is it so important that we protect it? Well, there's a number of different threats. We have habitat loss, by deforestation, and we might think that that happens just in other countries. But if you look at Ireland, for example, Ireland was 80% covered in forest. We're down to 13%, and of that, only 2% is our native woodland. So these things that we think are happening elsewhere are happening in Ireland as well. We have habitat fragmentation, where there was once a forest that went right the way across, and now there's only little pockets of that left. And that means it's difficult for animals who require that to move around, where you could implement something like a hedgehog highway, where you put a hedgerow in that they can move to from pocket to pocket. That could be a action that you take to look at that. And litter and pollution, the cause of a lot of animal deaths every year, and it is the cause of pollution in our waters and change of habitats. So when you're looking, you've already worked on litter and waste. You've looked at actions that take litter and plastics in particular out of circulation. So those kind of actions actually are biodiversity actions as well. And climate change, obviously lots of things that we do are affected by climate change. Our animals are affected by climate change, but even if you look at the weather systems, when we have less forests, we have less rain, which means we have degradation in our ground, which means that we have landslides. So there's lots of different effects there. And then over-exploitation, for example, if you looked at charts of Ireland, sea ships that are out there fishing at the moment, two of the largest fishing vessels in the world are off the coast of Ireland at the moment, and they act as little factories, basically can fish, freeze the fish, and package it and send it off without even coming to port. So they take masses of fish out of the water. But it's not just that. We overexploit a lot of different things as well. And then we have things like impact of invasive species. The grey squirrel there, which actually, believe it or not, was a birthday present for someone who had everything that they could already have, but they didn't have a grey squirrel, so it was introduced as a birthday present and basically outcompeted their native red squirrels. And that means that they were under pressure for a long time. They're actually on the increase, so that's worth looking at as well. Yeah, basically, we need to look after nature. We're part of it. We need to work with nature. We need to support the biodiversity on the planet. And think about it in positive terms. Like I've given you a lot of negatives there, but we have a lot of positive things happening. And it's very important not to overwhelm people with all of the negatives. So think about the positives that you can do. So all of the work that is being done by nature and how to celebrate that rather than to focus just on the loss. So we get down to the 7 steps, which is what you're here mostly for. And our 7 steps can be done in any order, really, but the first two need to be done uh, in order, and then the rest can change order. The first is to put together your Green Schools Committee. If you're a secondary school, uh, you can pop it in the chat and I can send you on a document. I don't think Sheila has it ready to go, but there's a document for Green School Committee formation in post-primary. It's up on our website if you want to find it, but it's worth having a look at that. Basically, every school has its own situation. It could be a very small school, it could be a very large school, and all of this is flexible that you can fit it to whatever way suits you. So, for example, a green school, we say it should be student-led where possible. It should be whole school representative where possible. You'll obviously need a coordinator, and then you have optional extras. You should have maybe subcommittees for previous teams, or you could have other staff members, parents, community members, principals, caretakers or groundkeepers are very good person to have involved when you're talking about the biodiversity team. And it's whatever way suits you. Usually in a primary school, we'll have a representative body from each class group. They might be elected. You might draw the names out of a hat. Whatever way works for your school. In secondary schools, it tends to be maybe in the realm of the TY class groups. But if you're going to go down that way, then maybe subcommittees on previous teams that you worked on could be made up of anyone from the junior cycle, or you could have representatives from senior cycle who maybe just come in on a particular event. Whatever way works for you, but keys are student led and that the students have a say in what's going on. When you have your committee in place, the next step is follow suit. You have to do this next, which is your essential actions. For biodiversity, the essential actions are a biodiversity awareness survey. And I think Sheila can share that with you. And then to compile a habitat map. I'll go into those in a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides. But they're the two essential actions. All the other actions evolve around those. And the other thing you have to do is to revisit your previous themes. So that could be litter and waste. It could be energy. It might not be. It'll be travel and it will be water. And look at those in terms of biodiversity. So, for example, we already talked about pollution and plastics, how they affect biodiversity. So you could do an action based on that. And it's revisiting a previous theme, but it's also adding to what you're doing on biodiversity. This is what the basic survey looks like. You need to do the survey in year one, as early as possible, and you get an idea of what the situation, what the awareness of biodiversity is. If you have low results, don't worry about it. It nearly helps because all of the actions that you take after this point are looking to increase that awareness. So you'll have a great increase if you have low results to start with. Not suggesting you should change that. In terms of the primary schools, we suggest that you do it in the senior classes, and it can be a show of hands in the junior classes where you ask the question and teacher takes numbers. For a secondary school or a particularly big school, if you can just focus on about 20% of the student population, that's enough to give us a good idea of what the school knows itself. So the awareness there, don't worry if you find the results are low, as I said. Um, and then we have a couple of videos to show afterwards to explain a bit about biodiversity. These are live links, so when you get the slides, you'll be able to look through them. And there's some really nice ones there. The one This is Ireland is very nice, and there's a colleague of ours has done one very similar to that as well that I will email on afterwards. In terms of the habitat map, then, again, it's a year one exercise for the review, and then you're going to repeat it in year two, and you're looking at going out into the school grounds, looking at creating a baseline of what biodiversity is already there. And even if you have all grey stone walls and you don't have any greenery there, there is biodiversity there. So if you find you're in that situation and you want to get some tips off us, please email us. We can tell you about things like lichens growing on the wall. You can advise you to look over the walls and see what's growing around the town and have a habitat map that includes those borders that you might not look at. So it basically is just looking at what's there, and then year two will be looking at what improvements you've made to increase the biodiversity there. A nice way to do this map is to have it as a live map. So you have it up on your notice board, and people, as they see things, can add it to the map, and you have it growing over time. So it's a really nice way to look at biodiversity. So include things like your pitches, any trees in the area, hedges, raised beds, anything that's already there, and any action that you take to enhance it. Um, yeah, so lots of resources on how to do that. And we have presentations, we have webinars, um, recordings for teachers, and we have lesson plans. Again, there, all of those underlying things are live links to those on our website. So when you get the presentation, you'll be able to see those. And Sheila can put some in the chat as well. I think we have some links there. So part of the this is to get out and investigate and look at the habitats and record what you see. And you can get involved in things like Biodiversity Ireland. They do different surveys at different times of the year, and it's worth having a look at that. And there's some really good apps as well that I can share in the follow-up email, like plant identification apps or bird identification apps that can help you with that and help the students. But get out there, see what's growing, and take note of it and see how that changes over the seasons, because its biodiversity changes over the seasons in that you might not identify a tree until the flower comes out. But if you keep note of what it looked like in the winter, then maybe next winter you'll be able to identify it without the flower. Um, Based on those reviews, you come up with your action plan. So, as I said, the rest of the steps can be done in any order. Action plan comes up based on your review, you say, well, we need to increase our level of awareness, or we need to make practical improvements. And how do we do that? What actions do we take? So, um, in terms of increasing awareness, you can follow along with nature's calendars, which we have every year. You look at habitat species surveys, you can find out about species in your local area. For example, if you're an urban area, you could have swifts. If you're a rural area, you could have foxes or hedgehogs. Anything that you know is in the area, then that could be a specific thing that you work on with your school. It couldn't even become a little bit of a mascot. A lot of schools adopt a bee as a mascot for a biodiversity team. Anything like that, and then you take actions to help that particular animal. Schedule time outside with planned activities. Examine food chains, so predator prey. Uh, Send letters home about different things. Try and find out who's working in the area to protect nature and see if you can get them to come in. Share results of awareness survey. Chart it. Put it up on your letters home or onto your notice board, and develop a connection with nature. Um, for practical improvements, then we have a huge amount of these. You can leave our areas unmanaged, hedgerows, grass areas, plant native trees, flowers, develop organic gardens, create ponds, log piles, leaf mold. That's just letting the leaves there so hedgehogs can be in them. Wildlife areas. I mentioned the mini beast hotels, and a lot of people, when they do this, they put down that picture in the bottom corner is quite a large mini beast. But actually, the current kind of idea behind it is to have lots of little small ones, because if you have the bigger ones, it can actually spread any diseases that might be amongst those. So, small little mini beast hotels spread out around the school grounds is a better option, and it's possibly something that you could put together, each of you in class, and then bring out, rather than having to collect the materials and make a larger one. And for the same reason, bird boxes and even bat boxes can be made out of unused wood in class, or in particular, if you're a secondary school, you could do that in wood shop, or if you're a primary school, you could link up with people like the Men's Shed, or a local secondary school that do woodwork, and put those together and work together on that. Um, so we have further information on some of those surveys that you could get involved in to be part of the citizen science kind of movement. There's butterfly, bumblebee surveys, there's otter surveys, there's lots and lots of different things. So get onto the National Data Biodiversity Data Center and have a look at what they have to offer. They also have a huge amount of resources on the National Pollinator Plan, um, which is worth a read, and you can take some actions in your school to increase the the availability for habitats for pollinators. As I said, we're partners with National Parks and Wildlife. Why not investigate? If you're close to one of Ireland's six national parks, you could go and get that could be part of your day of action, or it could be just a school trip, and get involved there. So in terms of the actual action plan itself, it should be in a format like this. You should have an action, a person responsible for it, a time frame, and then you can have another section where it says complete or non-complete, or ongoing. But it should be specific, measured, and easy to achieve. So you'll have actions like doing the awareness survey, like habitat year one, and then you'll have who's responsible for that. It could be the whole committee, it could be a subcommittee, it could be a particular class group, and then you'll have a time frame of when you want to achieve that, and then you'll come back and you'll do year two. So the action plan lasts for the full time that you're working on biodiversity, and it should really be a live action from all the time that you're working on green schools. So actions will include future actions and they'll include previous actions. So you'll know what have has worked for you on the previous teams, and that'll go into your live action plan for the biodiversity team. I hope that was easy to follow. So the next step then is your evaluation step, and that's looking at what you did in your environmental review. You're looking to repeat your awareness survey. You have your baseline for from year one, and you're looking to have increased awareness in year two. Then graph that up, chart it, and put it up on your notice board, and to repeat your habitat survey again. And you're looking to have hopefully improved the biodiversity on your school grounds, maybe by putting in little things like bird feeders or a little pond or stuff like that. And you want to add those to the map so we can see what the improvements are. Just to give you a kind of idea of what it looks like when we have the average school giving us our results, as you can see, it's quite low in the first survey, and you get a big increase. And this is what we've seen over all of the years that we've been doing biodiversity. That, you might have a school where it's quite high on they know what biodiversity is, but the rest of it is all very like that. It's just that's what you can expect to see. Habitat year two. The only differences are the improvements, but it also could be that your awareness levels have raised. So you might be looking at a pitch as just a pitch, or maybe in year two you'll have surveyed the grass in there and you'll know that it's not just grass. There are 10, 12, 13 different plants that grow in there as well, and you can add them to your legend to identify them on your school grounds. So there's lots and lots of biodiversity there. And over the time you're working on it, you'll be able to pick up on the different things that are there and add them to your habitat map. In terms of curriculum links, then, um, it links to everything. In terms of charts, it links to your maths in CS, CE, science, or in biology in secondary schools. You can look at life cycles of animals and different things like that. You can add it to your art curriculum. It's part of your home economics and where our food and textiles come from. Woodwork, you could be working with a secondary school if you're primary school, or you could have facilities near you that you can do these things with, design and construct bird tables and boxes and stuff like that. It's part of our history. So even when we talk about native plants in Ireland, we're talking back to the Ice Age. So you can talk around those areas and you can learn about the different species that lived throughout our history. Some of them are no longer with us. And so it adds up to a lot of work within the school. In terms then, the step six is to inform and evolve. Obviously, you'll need to have your Green Schools notice board, and we look for that when we come in to do our renewal visits when you're looking to apply. But you should also look at things like local press, like school newsletters, like using your apps or even your things like Teams or Google Classroom can be a way to share what you're doing with the rest of the schools who might not be lucky enough to be on your committee. And it's a great way for planning your events. And then you have to do an action day. So a lot of schools will link that with International Biodiversity Day or maybe Earth Hour or a climate awareness day or climate action week. And we have things like Tree Day, Tree Week, National Spring Clean, do a Clean Coast event like a beach clean. All of these link in with biodiversity. We actually have Tree Day coming up next week, and I'll talk to you about that in another couple of slides. You can get parents, grandparents, neighbors, anyone who works in the area to come in and give talks. I remember doing a renewal visit when I was outshone by a farmer who was bringing in some lambs to all of the classrooms. So things like that. Sometimes we don't actually have access to those things unless they're brought to the school. So maybe that's something that you could look at as part of your action day or an action week, whatever way suits. And again, look at our national parks and wildlife services. They're always happy to do events and great ways to go and have that as part of a class trip or a school trip. The last step that we have, but it's not really the last step. As I said, you could do it anytime after you form your committee. In fact, it can be a really good first step after to get everyone on board and so everyone knows what you're working on is to come up with your green code, which should be displayed on your notice board. It can be a poster, slogan competition. Some schools have come up with raps, songs, poems, codes of conduct. But basically, it's a slogan that is relevant to biodiversity that you know you're working on this in the school. So we have a couple of ones that we've seen in the past. And sometimes you see people just have the word biodiversity and under each they've come up with a different word based on it on the letter the letters in biodiversity. It can look really good as a poster if you do something like that. So some images from schools of actions that schools have taken. Um, sorry. Some tree planting here. We have a school that made bird boxes, and down the bottom here is actually really small cardboard mini beast hotels out of recycled materials. And a lot of small ones like that can actually have as big an impact as a bigger one, and it's healthier for the bugs as well. So if you are in year two, and some of you maybe, you might be looking at our renewal process. We have online application. I would recommend, even if you're in year one, to start your application as soon as you get your committee together. You can feed in that information and be adding it and saving as you go along, and then you don't have to try and remember when you're looking to fill in your application of what we did last year. So get the application started, whatever time of the year you're at or whatever stage you're at. You need to have a renewal visit, and that takes place anytime during year two when you think you're ready to go, even if you don't have everything done, because you can have actions, future actions on your action plan. You can get the renewal visit. And so it needs to be submitted by March the 28th of this year. So it's nice and late. It has been earlier than that in the past, so we've taken that on board as well. Especially for secondary schools, it's a busy time of the year. And once you have your application and you're successful, you'll be let know by us, and then you'll get an invite to a national award ceremony, and then you'll have hopefully a flag raising ceremony in your school and celebrate all the hard work that you've done. In particular, I say with secondary schools, sometimes the committee changes year on year and it's important to recognize the students who might not no longer be involved in it and get them in when you're doing the celebration because they were a big part in getting there in the first place. Last year we introduced the Biodiversity School of the Year, so keep an eye out for that. There's a Primary School of the Year and a Secondary School of the Year title. Last two winners came from Mead, so you guys need to start competing with them so it doesn't go back to me this year. And that's based on your application and your renewal visit. So it's worth while you don't have to do all of the different actions I mentioned, the more you do, the more likely you are to be in the running for Biodiversity School of the Year. I mentioned our 3-day seminar that's coming up. So we have a really interesting one linking up with our Globe program, and we have a NASA scientist who's going to talk to us about trees from space, basically what they can learn from trees from space. And that is registration is open at the moment. It's October 3rd, which is this week, Thursday at 1 o'clock. So if you're interested in that, please sign up. We have National Tree Week, March 10th to 14th. We have Green Schools. We'll celebrate interactive events then. And we have International Biodiversity Days. I'm not going to read through them all. You get the slides, so you'll be able to see them. Uh, we will be introducing in the next coming weeks a new thing called Habitat Heroes, aimed for primary schools, and it's a project where you will have a whole list of different animals for each class group, and you'll be able to learn about the animals. And then there's a resource, a lot of different resources that you can do worksheets based on those animals in the habitats that should be around your school. So. Yeah, Green Schools, then our website, you should go and have a look at that. There's lots of different things there, and these are all live links to our presentations, 7 steps, case studies, worksheets, all of that. Um, I included this slide that was shared earlier on, but just because there's some of these are very relevant to us. So on Creel Biog and Leaf, we'll give you a lot of stuff about trees. If you're around those, there's a huge amount of resources on their website. If you have trees and stuff growing near the school or in the school grounds, worth having a look at that. For secondary schools, the Young Reporters for the Environment have a team based around biodiversity. It's on ecosystem restoration, and that's a writing slash video slash podcast competition that's international. We had an Irish winner last year as well. Globe is worth having a look at as well, and Clean Coast will have things if you're close to a seaside environment. It might have bits and pieces that will help you on the biodiversity you might find there as well. So worth having a look at the other programs that Antashka run. We have a newsletter. If you haven't signed up to it, there's a link here. And be sure and celebrate. So I said my details would be there at the end and Claire's details. We also have a bio events at Antashka email address, so you can have a look at that there. I'm going to stop sharing. If there's any questions, I can't reach to stop sharing. If you have any questions in the chat, or if there's any questions for me now before we're pulled back to the main room, shoot away and I can I can answer. You can un mic or unmute or whatever it is. Um, did you spot any, Sheila, in the chat?
Sorry, no, only a couple of questions coming in. Lots of links shared there for everyone, handbooks and playlists and stuff. So, um, yeah, hope they're
So I
kicking us
see.
out here.
Yeah, I think they're going to kick us out. There was a question there, Katie, or you were saying that you're in modular buildings. That happens in schools. If it's the case that you don't have a lot of space that's green, try and go out to a park and adopt a park for the year, or look at the different things that come to visit. So try and put in some sort of plants that you can take with you when your new school is. Put them in pots, and then you can bring them when your new school is in place as well. There's ways around it all, and we can introduce little things like even growing seeds in your classroom, growing flower boxes and stuff like that can add to the biodiversity in the school grounds. It's not always possible or ideal, but yeah.
Okay, our room is closing, so I think we should probably go. I'm going to stop
Okay,
recording
I'm
here.
gonna save chat as well.